the bank.
Hey Brett, how's it going this week?
Good, Ange. How are you?
Good. Well, that means it's another episode of Money in the Bank, the podcast where we talk about all things related to personal finance and whatever we decide to get up to. So, this week is one of my very favorite topics ever. Can you guess what it is?
Compound interest.
Yes.
All right. All right. I'm on a roll already.
For your trivia question, how many people in America do not know what compound interest is?
57%.
70%.
That's what I said.
I feel like we're failing.
Oh, that's pretty
That's
pretty
a
bad.
lot of people. So, everyone listening, don't turn this episode off. This is the most important episode we've ever done.
All right. So does that mean they just don't have bank accounts, or what does that mean?
They might have bank accounts, but they don't understand what's going on in there.
They don't know why people are just giving them extra money at the end of the year? Like,
they have no idea.
Where's this extra money coming from? Might not even know that the money is increasing at the end of the year, I guess. Yeah.
Right. So before we do a deep dive into this, I did want to mention a couple things. So a few of you have reached out to me recently and actually sent me some typos that I've had on our website. So thank you very much. I appreciate whenever people catch my errors, I'm more than happy to fix it as soon as I can. And I just wanted to quickly mention, we do have a referrals tab on our website. So if you go to moneyinthebankpodcast.com, there's a referrals tab. We don't get paid to put anything on there, but if you use our links, we do sometimes get a kickback, not for all of them, just for some. But there is one, website on there that we have used for a long time, and their sign up is expiring soon. So the program is going to still exist, but I don't know how easy it will be to be able to refer people. So that is for Prolific. So we use that as a survey taking website, and it's the one that we've found typically gives us the best payout.
Right. Yeah. Easy surveys, best monetary return at the end of the day per survey.
Yeah. So I know I was just doing a couple the other day that were literally 7 to 10 minute surveys, and it was $1.
Mm-hmm.
So not a lot of work. It's a good payout. I typically average about $30 a month. So not setting any records, but it's a nice little bonus, I guess.
Right. It's a nice little alternative to just browsing Facebook or Instagram or something, right?
Yeah.
For 10 minutes.
So if anyone's interested, you can still hop on over to our website right now, click referrals. Prolific is still on there. I believe it will be up until mid-March. So, if you're interested in kind of another way to make some money online, that's a good way. Again, no pressure. I just wanted to highlight that since I have been getting a couple questions about it lately. So, and feel free to check out the rest of our referrals. I know Mint is on there, which is something we've used and loved. I know Personal Capital is up on there, and all sorts of fun software that we actually genuinely use and enjoy. So.
Right, and it's all free. We don't pay for any weird software or anything.
Yeah, nothing on there will cost you money. Yeah. So, okay, back to compound interest. So, I really want to do this episode in a way that literally everybody can understand. So, I want to say that in the beginning because I think if people still have questions, if we say anything that is confusing, I would really like listeners to let us know. Because I think for us, sometimes we can get a little ahead of ourselves, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So what is compound interest? Brett, how would you define it?
So you're loaning out your money by putting it in the bank to the bank, and the bank pays you some amount of money to borrow it.
Correct.
Right? So at the end of the day, they're giving you money to let them borrow money.
Yeah, so to say that in a different way, when you give a bank money, it's not like they just take your money. Let's say you give them $1,000. They don't just take that and
put it in the vault.
Put it in the vault, right? They loan that back out. So let's say that you put $1,000 in your emergency fund, but then you also have a house and you have a mortgage. Well, your money is basically getting loaned back out to you. So the bank is charging you, we'll say 4% for your mortgage. And then because, they have to pay their workers and everything, they can turn around and give that, $1,000 in that savings account 1% interest, let's say. And they can do that because they're, that spread, I guess, is 3% to pay between the 4% you're paying for your mortgage and the 1% that they're paying for their savings account holders. And then that 3% covers all of their employee costs and all of that jazz.
And profit.
Yeah. But I guess when we say compound interest, it's not just earning interest on that $1,000,
We just explained regular interest.
Because that's simple interest. So if I get 10% interest, we'll say, just to make it more fun, and I have $1,000 in the bank, that means I would get $10. No, I would get $100. I'd get $100 at the end of the year.
Regular math.
Regular math, really good. Okay, so I would get $100 at the end of the year. The beauty of compound interest is that the second year, instead of just getting $100 again, you'd get $110 because your original $1,000 is paying you. You can think of that as it's going to pay you $100 every single year, right? Steady stream. But then when you get that $100, if you reinvest it, it kind of sets up its own stream forever of $10.
Right.
But then that $10 sets up its own stream of $1.
Right.
And then that $1 sets up its own stream of 10 cents.
Right.
But then you add all that together and you just keep churning, and that's the magic of compound interest.
So year over year, it just keeps adding and, or basically multiplying over time.
Like rabbits.
Right.
That's a good way to think about it.
Right? Yeah.
If you're not like a numbers person, like you start with 2 rabbits, and then all of a sudden you have 100. Right? Mm-hmm. And that's really honestly what compound interest feels like to me, because I remember, like, I've always been somebody who plans ahead, and I remember, like, sketching out, like, how long is it going to take me to save up this amount of money for, down payment on a house or whatever, and thinking it was going to take me so long. And then once my money starts, like, earning money, I think of it as, like, I have these little green worker dollars that are just, like, off in their own little factory making more money every day for me, that I don't even have to do any work for it anymore.
Right, and I think my parents showed this to me, because we used to get every time we would deposit something into my bank account, like my personal little kid savings account, my parents would show me the slip, the deposit slip, and it would tell me how much, like, interest I made on my money that's been in the account, right? So we could look at it, like, every month and be like, okay, your money that's in here, this, like, $150 that you have in this account made, like, whatever, $1.50 for you. Like, you just got an extra $1.50 for nothing. So, like, if you add more money to that, you get more of that, right? That's the regular interest. But then if you leave it in there, that $1.50 that they just paid you, right? Now you have $151.50, right? So the next time you're getting even more money paid out. So then it became like a goal of mine to, like, increase that dollar amount so much and, like, keep it piling in there to increase that number that they were paying me, to get it as high as I could. Yeah,
and so I think a really important thing there too, that, like, lesson you learned was not, oh, sweet, I got paid $1.50, I'm going to take that $1.50 out and buy myself a dilly bar and, like, have that $150 left, and then next month I'll get another dilly bar. You learned, like, well, if I leave that $1.50 in there, that's going to really help speed up the process.
Right. I want them to pay me more money next time. Right. I want them to pay me like $100 every time I look at this slip, right? How do I get to that point?
But that is the magic of compound interest, is leaving it alone. So when we talk about compound interest, it's not like you earned 10% this year, like, you just get this money now to use. The real magic comes from leaving it alone.
Right, because if you take it out, then it's just regular interest, right? You just get that. You break all the chains, right? You break all the streams, and you only ever have that one stream. That $1,000 is just giving you that $100 a month, or $100 a year, and right, there's no gain there. If you have to keep stacking it in order to gain any benefits.
Yeah, so I think we should do a story time. How do you feel about story time?
Do we have puppets or something?
No puppets. Maybe you got finger puppets? No, so when I was 19 is when I opened my first mutual fund. And I think this is actually a really good story that highlights the power of compound interest. And these are all real life numbers. This is a real life example. So I just think it's, like, kind of a powerful journey. So let's get started. Let's buckle in. So the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I decided to be a crazy person and work 2 jobs that summer. So I knew from the prior year, freshman year, that I spent about $4,000 between books, gas, going home on weekends, fun little trips with my friends, going out to eat, whatever. That was, like, my annual budget at that time was $4,000, which is kind of amazing. Like, I wish I could get back to that. But, obviously that included room and board was covered. So that was just my spending money, I guess. So going into sophomore year, I knew I was going to work on campus a little bit, but I wanted to be able to save up $4,000 over the summer again so that I didn't, like, if I didn't get as many hours at my job or it didn't work out, like, I could survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I worked at Mancino's, and then I worked at the country club of Lansing out on the stand on the golf course. It was a very fun summer job, actually.
You were the hot dog girl?
I was the hot dog girl, yeah. But I made a mean grilled chicken sandwich, actually. That was my specialty. So, yeah, I worked both those jobs, and then I literally worked all the time. Like, sometimes I would only have, like, one day off for the whole week, or sometimes I wouldn't even have a day off in a week. And it was a lot of work, right? Like, it sucked. I won't sugarcoat it. That summer was, like, really hard. I didn't get to see my friends from school a lot. Like, I didn't make it back to Indiana very often, so that was pretty sad for me. And when I did have a day off, like, I was just, like, tired. So I would just want to, like, read or, like, watch movies, which also was the benefit of, like, I didn't end up spending as much money that summer as I thought I was going to. So I ended up working all that summer, and I had an extra $1,200 at the end of it. So I got to $5,200. I thought I only needed $4,000. And I was like, well, I don't think I need this $1,200. And again, I've mentioned on the podcast that my dad is a financial planner. So he had the suggestion of, like, well, you could put it in a mutual fund if you want to save it more for the future, like if you know you don't need it. But I was actually very apprehensive to do that. So we came up with the bright idea that there was a CD that I could get that was only a 6-month CD. So if I got it in August, I'd have my money back in February. So let's say I get into second semester of school and I'm like, oh, last year I only spent $4,000, but this year things are different. My books are more expensive. I would be able to, like, get that money, pretty quick into second semester to pay for expenses. So I was like, that sounds good to me. So my interest on that was going to be like 3% or something. So shoved it in a 6-month CD, kind of forgot about it. Fast forward to February, I was actually a little bit ahead of schedule because I had been working that year, and I was like, yep, I don't need this $1,200. I actually had come up with, like, another $400 that I also didn't need. So get that up to a whopping, like, $1,600, right? And I talked to my dad, and I was like, yep, I think it's time for me to buy my first mutual fund because I don't need this money. But what I did do is, with the $1,200 turned into, like, $1,221 from
just
being
from
in the
leaving
CD.
it there, yeah.
Yep. And so I said, hey, friends, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my $1,200 in the CD, or in a mutual fund, but with this $20, I'm going to throw a pizza party to celebrate buying my first mutual fund. So if we're following, to this point, I got a CD, got some sweet bonus money, decided I'm going to buy my first mutual fund, but I'm also going to buy a pizza party. So I'm having a really good time so far, So I put that money in the mutual fund, and the extra $400, but just to keep it easy, we're going to talk about the $1,200. And I literally just forgot about it. So, well, not literally. I mean, I knew it was always there. It always felt really good to have this money there, but I never touched it. So I was able to actually log back in, and it's almost about 9 years ago exactly that I put this money in. Brett, do you want to guess how much my $1,200 has turned into?
A couple $100. Well, money, it's supposed to double every 10 years, right? So you got to be getting close to that. So maybe close to $1,000.
I had $1,200.
Oh, yeah, like $1,000.
You thought I went backwards 200?
No, in 9 years, because it wasn't quite in addition.
What?
Sorry,
okay.
total.
So you think I have like $2,200?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I have $2,756.
Wow. So more, you're a little bit ahead of schedule.
Ahead of schedule. And that's pretty great. So I actually wanted to talk, though, about here's my different options. Now I'm super excited that I have this money. I'm like, good job, 19-year-old Angela. I love you, right? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this money yet, but it's nice to know I have it, right? Like, it's a nice thing that 19-year-old Angela did for me. But what were my other options, right? So I took that money out in February. I also remember sophomore year, I got invited to go on a spring break trip to Mexico, which would have cost right about $1,200. So at this point in life, I could have a memory of a spring break trip, right? Which probably didn't need to have that. So I'm happier with the $1,200. I also could have put the money in and then taken the interest out every year. So I could have a balance of $1,200. And let's say, I averaged 9.3% interest, I think it was, but we'll round up to 10 just for convenience sake. So I'm basically making $120 a year on this money now.
Mm-hmm.
So I could have 6 pizza parties a year, and I could have had that every year since then. But instead I chose to let the money keep growing. So at this point, now I'm basically earning, so back then it was like $120 a year. Now I'm earning $270 a year. Right. So, it's really kind of ramping up for me. So, I wanted to share that example to show, the true power of compound interest.
Right. And that's without adding anything else to it.
I've never added $1 to it.
All you did was you added 9 years ago, you just put this money in this account and then just never touched it.
Right. So, 9 years ago, instead of going on a spring break trip, I put this money in an account. And now I have a basically source of income that is now at basically $38 a month-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Somewhere right around there. And so now I could have a pizza party every month, right? So, that's the power of compound interest. You go from a pizza party
one time
to a pizza party every month.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll just keep growing from here, right?
Forever.
So in another 10 years, if I don't touch it, that $2,700 is going to be $5,400, and it's just going to keep going, right?
Right. And that's the rule, right? That's the rule of compound interest, is it generally will double. Whatever amount you put in, it will double after 10 years.
Right. And so now, 19-year-old Angela set up 65-year-old Angela in retirement to have, a pizza every day. So,
Right?
But, genuinely, that money, if I leave it until I retire, even though that was before I started saving for retirement, before I had a 401k, that is allowing me a really good source of income in retirement.
Right, because you're talking about 40, because you were 19, you said?
I was 19.
So you're basically 20 years old, and so if you're trying to, have that money when you're, 60, right? So you get 40 years of banking.
I get 4 doublers.
Yeah, so...
Not a lot of people get 4 doublers. Some people start saving for retirement in their 40s, and they're only ever going to get 2 doublers.
Right, so you got $10,000 out of it, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. 12 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, and then 20.
Yeah.
So 20.
Yeah.
There you go. So for 19-year-old Angela putting in $1,200, you end up with $20,000.
Right. So really the question we should start asking college students is your spring break worth $20,000 instead of $1,200, right?
Right. Yeah. How valuable are those memories back when you're 60?
Yeah. So...
And not that you shouldn't ever go on vacation ever, and you should be banking everything into mutual funds, but, right, don't jump on every single opportunity that comes up. Be be a little bit more selective and say, investing is also an opportunity that you have access to.
Well, and maybe that's the point that I should bring up. This was one time in college. I didn't do this the following year. The following summer, I worked at a job that was more high paying than the summer before. So between my freshman and sophomore years, I worked at 2 minimum wage jobs, and I worked a ton to accrue that much money. The next year, I basically doubled my income because I got a really good internship, and I was working 40 hours a week instead of 80 hours a week. So I didn't save as much that summer because I had more time to spend money. Having time is a luxury that costs an enormous amount of money is what I learned that second summer. So I went back to school with about the same that I had the summer before because I just wasted money that summer. The following spring break, I did go on a spring break trip. So I'm not even telling people deprive yourself of this forever. It's literally I made a one-time sacrifice at a young age,
mm-hmm.
and I set myself up for a lot of success.
Right.
So, I think that's the really important lesson out of it, I guess. You don't have to do this all the time. It's just
the more you do it, right, the more it'll snowball into a huge benefit for future you.
Right.
Right.
And, I think, I don't know, I guess I always learned at a young age, it takes money to make money. And that's really what compound interest is all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the money that will continue making money for you.
Yeah, and the more that you put in now translates to less you have to work later in life.
Right.
right? So you can look at anything that you put in now, multiply that by compound interest, right? Whatever that formula is, whatever the factors are, whatever you put into it times your growth rate over time. But the money, your money, will turn into more money and more money and more money, and eventually future you will be like, I can retire.
Yeah, or, I think the other example is like, it always sounds so crazy to have to save up money for even closing costs on a house, right? Closing costs can be a few $1,000s on a house on top of the down payment that you have to have. And I think that's another really powerful thing. So when I was 19 when I put this money in, if I would have done that when I was 20 and 21, let's say, so I had, $3,600 that I would have put in there instead of the $12,000 or $1,200, then at this point, instead of the, $2,800 I'm at, I'd be at almost $10,000. And that right there would be covering my closing costs on a house and a decent chunk for a down payment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where it gets really important too. It's not always necessarily about super long-term retirement, but we're also talking about midterm money here of like, what are your goals in the next 10 to 15 years? And if you can get one doubler in there, like how much does that help your savings goal?
Right. Because if you can go, right, new car is a great example. Instead of like throwing $20,000 at a, brand new car or something, if you can go 10 years with like buying a used car or something way cheaper, or keeping the car that you have now and just making it work, then you can turn that $20,000 into $40,000, right?
Right.
It's a big number to try and just go after that'll just like poof into existence, right? If you can just like put up with like a little bit of, voluntary discomfort, which we've talked about before for a little while.
Yeah, and that's really kind of the recipe for success in our opinion, and how we've come to find a lot of success. Like I shared my example from college, but I didn't stop there, right? So I did that, and then sure, like junior and senior year of college, I probably spent more money. But then when I graduated from college, I was like, okay, I knew what was up. I already have this mutual fund. I can start contributing it to again, now that I'm out of college and making money. And like laying that foundation for myself, it meant that I had a spot for my money to go when I didn't know what else to do with it, which is really important, because otherwise if you're like, well, I have all this money and I don't know what to do with it, you find ways to spend it.
Right? Yeah. According to, one of the episodes we just did, I'm good at spending money on other people when I just don't know what to do with it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I remember when we started dating, I feel like you weren't recognizing the full value of compound interest because you were not really invested in large interest-bearing accounts.
No, and I had no experience with that, and I didn't have anybody telling me that was like a good thing to do or like look at that in any way, right? That was just like a whole nother world to me at that point that I like had not accessed yet.
Yeah.
And now it's like the most important part of our like long-term strategy. Right.
So maybe we should touch on that a little bit. So when we're talking about the magic of compound interest here, we, threw around the idea that your money can double every 10 years.
Right.
But it has to be invested in the right vehicle. It's
right.
not going to do that.
You can't leave it in your savings account that has like 0.001% interest, right? That doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't just double overnight. So we're talking about mutual funds.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, you can expect to get about 7% for a historic average in, most index mutual type funds. Obviously, performance varies. Don't shoot the messenger, right? So that's...
But the longer you leave that in there and don't touch it, the more it'll stabilize over time, right? Because it'll hit highs and it'll hit lows, but it always just kind of fluctuates around and comes back to normal.
Right. Bonds, if you want to go that route, typically you're going to, and these, again, vary with time, but you're going to be more in the 4 to 6% range for bonds. And then if you peel back another layer, there's CDs, which is, I mentioned I used one in college. What that basically is a savings account that gives you a little bit higher interest for the promise of you not touching that money. So it's advantageous for the bank because in a normal savings account, I might put $10,000 in there, but then say, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go buy a car now. I was only leaving this money in there until I had enough to buy a car, and now that money's out. Well, then if they were loaning that money out, they have to cover that liquidity again, right? So it's riskier for them. Where in a CD, you're saying, yep, I'm going to put this $10,000 in, and I'm not going to buy a car for 5 years. So I'll buy a 5-year CD and you can have this for 5 years. So the
Right.
bank can formulate a better plan with that money, so they're willing to give you a little bit higher interest rate for that. So CD rates, I think right now you're going to see for like a 1-year CD, we're going to see about 2.5%. For a 4-year CD, 5-year CD, we might be up to closer to 4%.
Yeah, and that was my primary savings vehicle when I was a kid, right? If my grandma gave me money or birthday money or whatever, I eventually got like $1,000 out there, and they were like, okay, we're gonna put this in like a 3-year CD, or just to dip your toe in the water of like what things can do, and they're like, okay, after 3 years, like this $1,000 is gonna turn into $1,300 or whatever, right? And I was like, oh man, that's really exciting. So then I just like locked that money up for 3 years in that CD, and I had a bunch of CDs, and they were all stacked together. And when you're a little kid, you don't need a whole lot of access to that money that often. So
Right.
It's a good way to just like can keep building up wealth. But my CDs were at like 7.5% when I was young. Right?
Yeah, but you're bragging when
That's unheard of now.
No, when mutual funds at that time were getting 20% though.
Yeah, well, I didn't know what they were because I was like 12. So.
Well, I know, but I'm still saying like we don't want to make the argument that CDs are
they're
like
not,
this good investment vehicle because
right.
they're not a good investment vehicle.
You're not optimizing your profitability by using CDs, but right, it's safe-ish to get started. If you're afraid to like jump in and start with mutual funds.
And it's a tool. Like if you know
yeah.
you're going to need, like for me, I used it because I was like, I might need this money in 6 months. You don't want to invest in mutual funds for just 6 months because if they can fluctuate more, right? So if they're down, then maybe, that's not a good time to take the money out. But with CDs, it's good for planning. So
and building a habit.
So in my other example of like needing to buy a car, if you know I have this sum of money, my current car is going to last me for 3 years, and then I'm going to need to buy a car, a CD can be a good option because you're going to get a little bit higher interest rate. You know your money's going to be safe, right? So that's a good option. But again, it's all about we have all these different tools in our toolbox. Choose the right one, right? So, and the other thing I will say is right now our bank account, our savings account is like it's like at 2.3 or 2.4% now.
Interest
And
rate.
it's like approaching the same interest rate as a 1 to 2 year CD. So then at that point, I don't want to lock my money up because I don't want to have this penalty if I decide I need the money sooner. So then a high yield savings account can also fill a gap, right?
Right.
And they would teach you kind of the same lesson as a kid of like, you're still getting a lot of interest, right? But then you have a little bit more flexibility if you need that money.
Right. As a kid, though, I didn't have because high yield savings account, you need like a minimum of like $10,000.
Not for Ally.
Oh, really?
No minimum.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So just use that all the time.
So no excuse. Yeah, so that we recommend Ally. There's no account minimums. You can put, I think maybe you have to have $25 to open an account, something like that. But, it's not like a huge hurtle barrier to entry.
Right,
You can get in at a decent amount. There's no weird fees.
Yeah.
And then you get, 2.2, 2.4% interest, somewhere around there. So it's a pretty good deal. But again, when we're really talking about compound interest, we're talking about getting that money invested long-term into mutual funds and really kind of targeting people, saving for retirement in their 401ks. And that's where you're really going to see a lot of magic happen. So saving for retirement doesn't sound fun, but it really is a lot of fun. So start early, start young, and you will continue to thank yourself year after year when you can throw a pizza party every month.
Or every day.
I mean, just wait. I don't know. Maybe this will be a fun experiment because I plan to leave that money in the mutual fund, my measly $1,200 9 years ago, so we can update people in another 10 years on the podcast and see if I keep doubling my money every 10 years. So.
That's right. Cool.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. I will drop all of my contact information in. If you have any questions about where should I be putting my money or what savings account, you can always email me any of these questions and I will definitely help you out and respond. So I will link all of that in, and thanks again for tuning in this week. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Money in the Bank. Make sure to subscribe to us on the iTunes or Stitcher app so that you get weekly alerts every time we post a podcast. Or if you want, you can visit my website, moneyinthebankpodcast.com. And if you want to reach out with any questions or further comments, please email me at Angie@moneyinthebankpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Money in the bank.